But like, what if he asked you to give everything? What if he asked you to like put it all on the line to do what he's asking you to do? Like, will you do it?
Okay, I'm here with Gabe and Laura, founders of Steadyworth. So, Gabe and Laura, what do you do?
So we have a financial coaching company, and so I just kind of start. So we help people be more hands-on with their money. We teach them how to build financial plans. We teach them how to invest in the stock market, and we also do life coaching. So I'm a CFP, certified financial planning professional. Laura's a life and leadership coach, and so she does the life and leadership side. I do more of the finance technical side.
Okay.
I'll let her interview herself.
Yeah, I mean, he covered it pretty much, but yeah, life and leadership coach. We found just like so much of people's money has to do with their life, like how their emotions, like their relationships, all of that impacts your money. And so more often than not, we have a conversation with people about that. And then like the money piece or the tactical piece kind of comes second, because that piece, while people don't know a lot about it, it's a little bit easier to execute than coming over some of the limiting beliefs around money or some of the emotions that they have about money, like fear, shame, guilt. And so, yeah, we kind of work it from both angles because we found that to just be the most helpful for people.
Absolutely. So, what would you tell someone who, because I experienced that too, and as a mortgage specialist, what would you tell someone, or how would you mitigate that, the fear and shame, guilt part of it, like in terms of money? Like, what would you say to someone?
I think first and foremost, like you have to get to a place where obviously someone trusts you, but like you have to demonstrate some level of interest in their goals and what they're trying to achieve and meet them where they are. Like we talk about this all the time. Like, I wish we were further along here, or I wish we could have done this here. But the reality is like most people aren't where they want to be. And so how do you find out where they are and meet them there and just slowly walk them through the process? Like, what is the truth about what you believe about money and what's a lie? And kind of being able to have those honest conversations with people can help break people down pretty quick, like in a nice way, as
Right.
If they believe that you're actually genuinely trying to help them get to their goals.
Yeah, I think also, just kind of reaffirming that it's like, hey, you might feel fear or shame about something, but this is something that you weren't taught in school. I mean, like, and I think it's like third or fourth grade where you learn your times tables. I mean, I think maybe first or second, you're learning to add and subtract. And literally right after that, you should be learning something about budgeting and allocating, even on a small level, even if it's your allowance or food, like how you mentioned earlier. Whereas, like, people aren't learning these things. And all of a sudden, you get out of high school, you get sent a bunch of credit cards, you have access to all of these things, and then you have basically enough room to destroy yourself financially, and you never had any of the proper training and upbringing. So it's just like knowing. So I just want to, just try to encourage people. It's like, hey, you weren't given the tools for this, so forgive and forget, try to forget whatever mistakes you made. Let's figure out where you're at right now and how can we plot a path forward with the right tools and resources that you need to be successful.
Absolutely. I find what some people do is they compare their journey to someone who is, 10 or 15 years ahead of them, in terms of houses or in terms of savings for retirement or that sort of thing. So
Yes.
what is some advice that you would give someone who is on that path, on that journey?
Yeah, great question. I often say it's like, hey, you want to make sure that you're making moves that are according to where you're at right now. And so we were speaking to some college students a couple weeks ago, and I was saying, and they were, it was at a student athlete summit. And so when you think about it, it's like these student athletes have been playing these sports many of the time since like the third grade. And so as a student athlete who's playing basketball at a D1 school in the US, they can do a certain workout, but the same student who's in the third grade can't do that workout. But no matter if you're in the third grade or if you're in D1 college level, you can always do the fundamentals. So it's like, if you're trying to do something that's too advanced before you're there, it will break you. But you can never go wrong doing the fundamentals. So, and when you think about the money fundamentals, is learning to live within your means. So make enough money, but live below what you're making sure that you're managing your money correctly, and then getting your money into vehicles where your money can start growing and generating more. Those are some of the fundamentals that it's like, no matter what you have going on, those are always good things. But I feel like when people start trying to do, I heard this person do that, and I want to like try to, use my credit card to go buy this, and then I'm going to invest that money, and then I'm I'm gonna get that money to grow, then I'll pay back my credit cards. Like this is where we start having trouble happen.
Right.
So it's like as
Right.
you're kind of violating the fundamentals before you're ready.
Absolutely. So, what was the vision and the goal behind your business? Like, is there a reason that you got into it? Like that this was a thing that you wanted to master?
Well, well, money is something that's always been interesting to me, and I've been both sides of it. So I've violated all of the fundamentals. I've had a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I've like
Mm.
done all of the things,
Okay.
but there was a couple key things. Like one when I had a career coach that was speaking to me, and he was like, "Hey, right now you're in your early 20s. Your career looks like a hodgepodge of different good opportunities."
Yeah.
He goes, "What is a story that you want your resume to tell that as when you're 40, 50, like that somebody can look and go, okay, this is why you're qualified to do this. You've been going down a path. What path do you want to go down
Yeah.
that you can stick to?" So I did a lot of reflection and introspection and finally figured out, hey, I want that path to be finance. So I started on that path. And then so I worked to get the CFP to become a certified financial planner. I was working at a firm where it's about maybe 9 of us. We were managing about $500 million. Biggest client had about 40 million. New clients had to have a minimum of a million. Most were coming in with 2 and 6 million.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I'm like, this is great, but what about people who need this help who don't have $1 million? How can you provide this type of this help on a large scale to people? And so my one thought is like, the biggest thing that most people need starting out is education. They need a shift in their mindset. So then during COVID, around like 2020, I started working on this idea that if we were to launch, actually, I wanted to launch like a company where I manage money, and I was working on different ideas. Then I started working on an educational component, and I was like, hey, the educational component is it.
Okay.
I want to focus on the educational component. So that's where Steadyworth was birthed out of that. And, we kind of built like, what would an educational framework look like? And so now that's what we do. We just educate people on how to manage their money just in all aspects, the same way a certified financial planner would do for them if they were taking it to a firm. We're teaching them the fundamentals from the ground level.
Okay. And so you said you've been on both sides. So what was the key to overcoming that negative mindset? What was the key to overcoming and deciding, okay, no, I'm not going to be stuck in this place. Like I have this goal, this vision. What helped you get out of that?
Somebody was who said, I think it was just like shifting, one not wanting to do things as like, I was around friends and I'm the second youngest.
Okay.
So I had siblings that were older than me. They're making more money. I'm hanging out with them. And then I'm like, hey, I want to go do some of this. Maybe it's hanging out. Maybe it's going to Vegas like where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And then, and I'm spending a little bit more money. I had to do a mindset shift. Okay, this is where I'm at. This is what are my goals in the next 5, 10 years? And how am I going to get myself there financially? Because if I keep violating those principles, like spending more than what I'm earning,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get there any quicker. It's actually going to continue to slow me down because I'm borrowing from my future self right now every time I charge something on my credit card. So after having that Chapter 7 bankruptcy and having that full financial reset, and digging myself out of that, credit wise, because, you take a major hit on your credit.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to just change my mindset on how I look at money. What are the things that I value? What are the things that I really want to spend on, and how do I want to allocate my resources?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you have anything you wanted to add in? Well, I know we weren't together when that happened, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm good on that
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of growing your business, in terms of helping other people, what are some keys to success that you think that people need to have in place in order to have a firm foundation?
I think getting help early, and I think this is, of course, we're financial coaches, so we encourage people to get help early. But I think this is true in anything. I mean, I started playing golf like 20 years ago, and I mean, first thing I want to do is get a financial coach because a golf coach, because the thing is with a sport like golf is like unlearning bad habits is harder than learning them the correct way the first time. Same
Right.
thing with finances. Like when you
Right.
unlearning bad mindsets and habits, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also it's like, when you make money and then you make a mistake with money and you lose money,
Yeah.
that can feel like really heartbreaking as well. So,
Right.
I think getting the right help first, making sure you're understanding what are the foundational fundamentals of finances. And the great thing is that they're very simple. It's when we go through high school, we go through all these crazy math classes, trigonometry, algebra, everything in finance is all adding and subtracting. It all has to line up. It's just adding and subtracting is very simple.
Yeah.
So making sure the numbers line up would be something that I say, and make sure you get help, get the right coaching, and yeah, get plugged in, and also maybe get plugged in with a group of people who are doing the same thing, because it's like another thing that I constantly see working with clients is that you have a couple clients whose friends are just, they want to do happy hour, they want to turn up, they want to do that. But then you have some clients who are like, hey, I'm trying to save for a house. I want to, save something. And then it's like
Right.
when you have friends who have split minds, then it's like
Right.
it's hard for you to stay, going down the same road.
Right.
When you're not there, kind of like, not to change it spiritual, but imagine you're trying to like live your life for God, and then somebody else isn't. It's
Absolutely.
gonna create, an issue after a while.
Yeah. Oh, I'm here for the spiritual. Do you have something you want to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I think a lot of what holds people back is their mindset. Like,
Okay.
they have a specific way of thinking and they're actually unaware of the way of thinking. And so they don't even know that they're preventing themselves from taking action. And that's just something I've dealt with over the years, like just developing self-awareness and like examining some of my belief systems and challenging some of my belief systems,
Yeah.
and not just taking them as truth, but really saying, like, is this a truth or is this just my truth that
Right.
I've developed over time? And so I think honestly, in order to like really make a change financially or in your life or to be successful, like,
Yeah.
you have to look at yourself. You have to reflect. You have to see what you believe
Right.
and see what is actually serving you and what's hindering you. Because if you don't do that, you don't really have good soil, right? Like, you could plant a bunch of seeds and it just goes away, right? Because it's not good ground. And your mind really is the groundwork for growth in any area of life, financially, professionally, personally. And so if you're not really assessing, it's like one of my least favorite things that people say is like, oh, this is just part of my personality. And it's like, no, it's not, right? Like, that's a mindset that you have that's shifting how you make decisions. And
Right.
so if you're not really starting with that, some of the other stuff is just hard to do.
Right. You said you didn't want to go the spiritual route, but I will.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biblical principles behind like what you do and like what you're teaching?
I think, just even what she was starting to say is like, when he talks about the parable of the sower, and it's like, we have resources that, when anytime we're working, we're receiving resource, we're working, we're putting out, using whatever God's given us to create money or to get money.
He's given us
We're
some
not
seed,
right. Yeah. And we get that seed, and then we get to choose what we do with that seed. And so it's like, that seed could give us 30, 60, or 100-fold back. And, and some of it, it sprouts up and it goes away. And so it's like, where are we're doing with our seed, or the parable of the talents, like making sure that we're working it and not just burying it.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and I feel like that when I hear about like, I run into so many people, they're like, well, I don't know what to do with my money, so I just have it in the bank account. I was talking to this one person last year. They told me they had $500,000 sitting in a bank account in cash
Doing
and
nothing.
just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you realize that, what $500,000 bought you 5 years ago is not what is going to buy you now.
Right.
And in 5 years from now is going to, you're just losing money every month that is staying like that. And I was even reading just a finance article even this year that was saying that it's like for with the rate of inflation, for like every $100, it's lost like 90% or 10% of its buying power.
Yeah.
So it's like, so if you have $100 bill in your pocket, it's only buying $90 worth of goods. So I'm like, imagine if you're sitting in $500,000 and you're not putting this money to work doing something.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And you don't want to invest $1,800, $2,500 to get help investing it. That's like the mindset shift, right? Where it's like you need good ground, right?
Yeah.
And like, to add on to the parable of the sower, excuse me, like it says the seed that falls on good ground sprouts and grows, right? But if it's on rocky ground or there's different weeds could be different mindsets that choke the seed out, right? And so it's like, how much are you losing by not submitting basically to the process? And another thing I would think about too is just like in the Bible, all the greats, it talks about how God multiplied what they had, right? Even if you think about the bread and the fish that Jesus multiplied, like it's like you got to bring what you have and like trust God to multiply it, because that really is a principle in the Bible. It's like we're not called to have everything together and then come to him. It's like we're called to bring what we have and let him multiply it, right? And that applies to our money. And if we don't really trust or believe that God's provider, then we're going to hold on to it tight to our chest, or we're not going to share, or we're not going to look at some of the things that are preventing us from multiplying and sharing it with more people and being generous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, on that note of generosity, how does like tithing and being generous fit into the whole financial plan, financial responsibility? Because so many people think, this is the money that I have, and it can stifle them from being generous. So, what would you say to
Well,
that?
so I mean, if I'm speaking to somebody who's a believer, I'm a huge into tithing. I remember when I was back, I believe I was in the sixth grade, and this was back when you had tithing envelopes. There wasn't the tithing thing when that was online, and my mom took me to the booth at our church to go get a tithing envelope. And she said, you may not have something to put in this every week. But as you start, you're working a little summer job, you're working with your dad or this and that, as you're making money, you make sure you give God his 10% and he will multiply, what you have. And I mean, and that principle has stuck with me. And I can tell you, it's like, and if you, for those people who've tithed, they've seen it's like, it's not a dollar for dollar return. You sow in some seasons and you may not see anything. And then all of a sudden in another season, it's like, oh my gosh, what happened? I don't even deserve this. How is this even happening? But I strongly believe it's like, you're finding God can do more, of course, with the 90 than what we could do if we had 110. Like if we got for paid full, then somebody gave us more. But it's just like, you also have, I think it's so important to think beyond your money and think about like, okay, it's like, this is the ultimate investment, investing into the kingdom, but also just when you are looking to see, how can I be a giver as well? Like, when I think like, if I'm constantly thinking about my money just as for what it can do for Gabe or what it can do for our family, then I feel like it gives me a limited mindset. But when I'm thinking about, how can I sow this money into the lives of others, is more important. So I think, as tithing is important. I even feel like giving money to people, like sometimes, I'm sure this happens to you guys. God encourages your spirit. Like, I mean, the other day we were in the airport flying here, and I go into the bathroom and there's a guy in there there was a bathroom attendant in the men's bathroom in the airport cleaning the stalls as people were coming out and go, hey, here, no, don't go in there. And I'm like, and there's no tip jar or anything. I'm like, wow, this guy, and I mean, doing his job with excellence.
Yeah,
And so
wow.
I'm like, I cannot walk out. I just felt convicted. I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
walk out of here without giving this guy some money.
Yeah.
I mean, like he is in here cleaning bathroom stalls with excellence.
Right.
And I'm like, I love the spirit behind what he's doing. And I mean, he was proud of his clean bathroom. And so, I believe there's so much importance of sowing into the kingdom of God. But then even, I think there's also those opportunities when, I didn't say, hey man, God bless you or something like that. But I think there's just times when this is like, who knows what he's been in his mind or whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna make sure this guy feels seen today.
Absolutely.
And make sure, give him some money for
I
sure.
love that. We were at one of the outlets, and there's this young man, 15, and his communication skills, his sales skills were so good, but we knew we couldn't take there. It was cleaning product for shoes, but we knew we couldn't take it with us because we only had carry-ons. We couldn't check it. But I said to him, we can't take it. We can't buy this from you, but we want to sow into who you are as a person. And because we believe that there is a greater calling for you. And so we gave him a tip. Like we didn't buy everything he was selling, but it's just little things like that. Being able to sow into people's spirits, but also tangibly and practically is so powerful. It's a blessing to be a blessing.
Absolutely.
So people get this verse twisted, like money is the root of all evil, but it's the love of money is the root of all evil. So how would you expand on that? Like, what would you say to that?
I would just say that it's like, anything that we put above God can lead to rough things. So I think, when people start struggling with greed, and so it's like, hey, I need more, I need more, I need more. And it's so crazy to me when you hear about some of these stories of like people struggling with greed. Like Laura and I were just talking about some things that we had seen a couple politicians do that totally wreck their careers because
Politicians? No.
that's totally wrecked their careers. And I'm like, they did that for like 200,000. I'm like, they did that for 1 year's worth of wages. Now they can't even go back to their job for the next 30 years. They have to go do something else. And so I think, people can start loving. I think it's not just the love of money. I think it's anything that you start to love so much that it's like it gets put on a pedestal in your life. I mean, it can be a relationship, it could be a marriage, it could be your children. And I feel like evil can start to come out of those things because, your heart just can kind of twist. But of course, with money and greed, it's so much more because it's like, oh, if I get a little bit more of this, then it allows me to do that. And I feel like anytime you start to get greedy and you put money on that huge pedestal, you have limited thinking because it's like money money is just currency. It's an infinite resource that we can all get more of. But it's like when you start to think, it's like, hey, if I have to get it or they can't have it, then I just feel like that's when you really lose. Cause I feel like, if you guys, or when you got, I don't know how much you guys make, I don't even need to know, but you guys making $10 billion a year has nothing to do with me making money. It's not, so I just think that when we think like that, it can mess things up.
Yeah. I also think that there's like a perpetual, especially in like the Western countries, that money provides security and safety. And I think a lot of people trust in money more than they trust in God.
That's good. Okay.
And so when you're trusting money more than you trust in God, that's when that's when you're more susceptible to spiritual attack, you're more susceptible to be taken advantage of. You're less likely to do what God asks you to do.
Wow.
Because if he's asking you to sacrifice something or sacrifice giving into $20 here and there, but like, what if he asked you to give everything? What if he asked you to like put it all on the line
Right.
to do what he's asking you to do? Like, will
Right.
you do it? And I think most people, and I would say I'm saying this from personal experience, would
Yeah.
probably say no.
Right.
Like, I don't think God would ask me to do that. And it's like, well, I don't think that's true,
Yeah.
right? Like, God
There's
really
things in the
does.
Bible that say
It says
Right.
die to yourself,
Mm.
right? And so, and that's what that's what Jesus did on the cross for us as well. And so I think when you start to put that as like the main center and it directs all your decisions and you're finding safety and security, it's replacing God in a way that other things don't necessarily. And I think people can really get caught in that wheel. I see it all the time now that he's had to dig that out of me because I've had that be, okay, if I just make a little bit more money, or if I just do this, or if we don't have to give this, or we don't have to do that, then I'll be safe and secure. And it's like, no, I'm safe and secure because God is my father and my savior. And, and he's actually my provider. So anything that I get,
Jehovah
even
Jireh.
if I quote unquote worked for it,
Yeah.
was a gift
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
I owe back to him. So it's like 10% is like the minimum.
Absolutely.
Like you really should be, how can I use 100% of this to serve you and build the kingdom?
Right.
And what are you really asking me to do? And how can I be completely untethered to money itself so that it actually is something that just fuels what we're building as Christians
Right.
on the planet.
Right.
And I
God doesn't need our 10%. It's like an
It's
act
a
of
heart
obedience.
posture.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, what were you
Sure.
saying?
And I was going to add to that and just say that, I think that's why it's important that, as God provides for you and as you see different things happen in your life, that you make sure you keep a record of those, just like how God encouraged the children of Israel to do those things so that when you're going through those hard times, it's like, no, God came through this time. He can do it again. And so, even in our marriage, we've been married for 3.5 years now, we have a record of, we have those times before we were married that God's come through, but I even have been keeping record of the times like, look, all of a sudden out of thin air, this happened and this happened and that happened, just a brief one. It's like, we were working on moving to Miami a couple years ago and we went and looked at everything that, looked at moving, came back. I said, okay, with our current budget, we need about $20,000 to move and, this and that. I said, so we're going to start saving so we can get this $20,000 to move. We hadn't saved a dime yet. And 2 months from the day we got back, the place where we were living, the guy who owned the apartment building we were in, the property managers, they come, hey, we need you guys to move out of this apartment. Today's April 1st. We need you out by April 30th. And he goes, and being that you can be out, we can, if you want to sign this contract, we'll give you $10,000 right now. When you sign it, we'll give you $10,000 when you get out. So, I mean, $20,000 right there. I said, we're going to deposit these checks via the mobile app so that we can keep these checks for forever and just show like this is God provided $20,000. Like, what are you even talking about right now? I was like, I'm like, hold on, man. Like, you just stay here. I'm going to Home Depot to go get the boxes. I'm going right now.
You literally have the receipts that
Right.
God was faithful.
Right. And so, so,
Wow.
and I go back and I think about, so like even when we've had other time, then our biggest business deal was kind of similar to that, another kind of like $20,000 transaction. Lady pitches us on it. I'm like, we're trying to pitch her. Like we wouldn't have even come up with that number.
Yeah.
And then lady pitches us on it. It was like, oh yeah, if you guys can just do this and that, we could do it for like 20. I'm like, awesome. Yeah, we can do all of that right now. And so, but of course, we don't wake up and there's sunshine and flowers and 20K deals every day, but through these times, I'm like,
We'll claim it though.
right, not yet, not yet. But I'm just like, not yet. But I'm like, yo, if God's already done it, He's already shown us that He's more than faithful to do it more than once. He can do it again. Like, let's not doubt Him right now. Let's keep going.
Absolutely. Looking back and seeing God's every time He was faithful.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just saying, like, just adding a little bit to the bow to it. It's like God is more concerned with your heart than He is concerned with your wallet.
Yeah.
Like, that's very easy for Him. Like, He's created this huge, abundant world with all of these resources, all of these people. He can meet with you one-on-one, me one-on-one at the same time, and be personal and intimate. So I was like, why do we put a limit on Him financially?
Yeah.
Because it's nothing to Him.
Right.
Like, He could do it overnight, right? But what's your heart? And that, I think that's the more important part when it goes back to that scripture, is the root of all evil. Like, He doesn't want your heart to be tainted or just like easily manipulated, right? And so He wants you to be strong, firm in Him, and then who knows what else is possible.
Absolutely. I think about what's really helped me understand the heart of God so much is as a parent, and the verse that talks about like how much more would God give good gifts to His kids. When I look at my precious little princess, I'm like, of course you want good things for your kids, but you don't want them to be spoiled little brats. You want them to have a sense of responsibility. So when our kids wanted laptops, they were painting fences, they were dog sitting. So it's this like journey of learning responsibility and a process, not just here you go, like away, like, will you be a good steward of what I've given you? But I want to ask you, like, what are some advice that you would want to leave with the people in journey, success, trusting God, anything?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know God, if you're great today, would be an awesome time to get to know Him, and accept Jesus into your heart as your Lord and Savior. And I mean, because I feel like that's, for me, that's been the starting point with everything. And so it's like going through the bankruptcy, getting the CFP, meeting Laura. This is my second marriage. I was married once. I'm 41. I'll be 42 this year.
Also 41.
Yes. And so go 1983. 84. So but all of the things, it's like God has constantly had His hand upon me the whole time. And so I think that one is starting with having that foundation, and then then you can try to do things on your own, which I feel like I was going through this when I was writing in my journal the other day. I was trying to do some things on my own, and I felt like God was showing me, it was like, hey, your first marriage was you on your own. This marriage was me showing you. Like, even though God allowed us to move to Miami, because I've always had a heart to want to live in Miami, that was what I wanted. Right now we're in North Carolina, and I feel like that was what God's wanted, because our life has even blossomed even so much more being there than it did in Miami. Even though I was enjoying it, I hate to have to admit it, but I have to. Our life is better there, but God took us there. I was trying everything I could not to move there. Everything. And it just didn't happen. So I just think about like the ways that I'm like. And then also, like, before I left to start Steadyworth, I was really trying to get another job. I was going to stay in the corporate finance realm for a little bit more, because I was like, I'm not ready for this. And then we're just dating at the time. And she was like, I think that God's trying to tell you that it's time for you to move on, and that it's time for you. She was like, you keep trying to get new jobs, and just like it's not happening. And she was like, but yet you're working on this idea, and this is the thing that's happening. And so, it just like all of these things were coming together. And so I'm drawing all those back to me doing things my way versus me kind of like saying, God, what are you doing? I'm reading this book right now called Fearless, and it's by Fearless. Yes.
I love
yes.
I love him.
And yes. And I mean, I love it. And it's just like, he's like, God, what do I need to know right now? Because it's like, He already knows. He's so like, Lord, what do I need to know right now? And so that's where I'm getting at, where I'm just asking every day, what do I need to know right now? How can I help me do it?
Absolutely.
And so that would be the big things, of course, spend less than you make.
Right.
Manage, you have a budget,
Right.
get your money into something that's growing. Understand that, every year holding, government issued money, it just shrinks just because they print more money. And when they print more money to do the things that they're doing, they don't give you extra to say, here's extra so that we can up your finances too. So yeah, but know God, and and live within your means, get your money growing.
Yeah, I mean, I like God is so creative, so it's like he's built this whole world, and it's like you and I are don't just met this weekend,
Like
and
an
we're
hour
so
ago.
yeah, and we're like, and we're so different, and we're uniquely created, and so it's like there's no one who's ever going to be like you again.
Mm.
Like no one before you is ever like you, and no one after you is ever going to be like you, and that's true about every human on the planet.
Mm.
So it's like if you think God has not intentionally designed your life for some sort of purpose,
Mm.
you're believing a lie,
Mhm.
basically, because there is purpose built in you. There's creativity built in you, and so it's like it breaks my heart when people are like, "Oh, well, God's just forcing all these rules on me." It's like you don't really know God. Like you've only been introduced to religion, and
Right.
like if I were to give anyone advice, is like just trust him with your life because he really will do a better job than you'll do yourself. And it's like you don't even have to come forward like right, like you can get right in the moment, and he's going to continue. And one of my favorite songs right now is Sure Been Good by Elevation Worship, where it says, you love me as I am, but you didn't leave me there. Like you kept me, pushing. And so I think that's true. And I think when you have that understanding and that foundation, like even the money stuff, how you manage the money, it doesn't feel as tight. You don't have to hold on so tight. And you can
Right.
just ask God, like, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? Right?
Mm.
Who am I? Who did you create me to be?
Yeah.
And how can I serve you with my money, my finances, my life, my time?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's what really matters. And that's what people are really searching for.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Oh, that's good. I don't know if you ever heard this. This was something that was told to us, but God doesn't necessarily. I said this to Omar the other day. God doesn't necessarily match people, but He matches assignments.
Yeah.
And so the complementary giftings in your calling, and I totally see that what you guys are doing is just kind of in alignment and just flowing, and there's a grace for what you're doing. So it's so cool to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was fun. Yeah.
that. I heard of that. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Cool. I think that's it.